Hello and welcome to this episode of Between the Studs. I'm your host, Mark. Today I'm joined by Alex.
Hey, everyone.
And Daniel.
Daniel.
Hey, Daniel. Daniel is going to be a little tired today because he just got back from Vic Fair, Virginia. But we're really glad he could sneak into this episode and give his thoughts. However, I know Daniel isn't the biggest fan of this theme we're going to be discussing, which is, of course, Spyrius. Now, Alex, this is why you're here today on what we would normally call Daniel's Deep Dives when we cover a theme in detail. But I think you know as much about Spyrius as anyone here. So really excited to have you on the panel today. Before we get too far into it, let's just talk a tiny bit about Spyrius. Then we'll talk about what we know about Spyrius, how we encountered it, and in the beginning of our LEGO careers. Spyrius is a sub-theme of LEGO Space, LEGO Classic Space. It went from 1994 to 1996 or so, although there were some polybags that were reissued a little bit later. So yeah, it has a bunch of kind of more villainous side of Classic Space. You usually see the good guys. So. This is kind of the bad guy side of the equation, so I'm really excited about that. But we'll definitely dive into all the details later. But Alex, what was your first experience with Spyrius? When did you encounter this theme for the first time?
First, I want to say it's Spyrius time,
everybody. It's Spyrius time, or Spyrian time. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, great question. Mm-hmm. So, I got into, when I got back into LEGO from my dark ages, I bought the Pirates of Barracuda Bay set. I absolutely loved it. So, I started to get into Pirates, and within the past year, I got into Castle, and I think I was watching the Imtron video from us here at Night of Break.
Fantastic.
With you and Daniel. And Daniel mentioned how he wanted to have at least a favorite from Pirates, Castle, and also Space, kind of the different factions. So I was kind of like, I've already got, I like the modern Pirates, I like the Black Falcons for Castle, and I was like, what am I going to do for Space? I was looking through on Bricklink all of the different factions for Space, all the more classic ones. And they were really expensive, a lot of them, especially the original Classic Space.
Oh, yeah, the original 80s and 70s.
Imtron, really caught my eye when I was watching the video. But Spyrius is up, for me, it's Imtron and Spyrius. And Spyrius really caught my eye because of the really cool color combination. It's kind of a mixture. It's not just one. It's kind of one set of colors, but they have some variations, and kind of the trans dark blue and trans red, which I really enjoyed.
It's a variety. Yeah,
and it was also affordable too compared to the other kind of classic. For me, this is kind of near the end of kind of the classic. I know that's maybe a hot take and debated within the space community.
Yeah, it's in the latter half of Classic Space, I would say, for sure. So yeah.
So this one really caught my eye. It was affordable as well, and didn't hurt my wallet too much.
Yeah,
it looked really cool.
So
cool story.
That's a fun way to get introduced to it. I'm glad you encountered it on your research of Classic Space factions. I think it definitely fits among that list for sure. For me, as a kid, we got a number of little yard sale finds, and one of them was just a small bucket of Lego. It wasn't even like the size of a normal container, like a store your lunch in. But it had two minifigures in it. One was an Ice Planet figure, and one was a Spyrius figure.
Wow,
so me and my brother, being brother, he got the Ice Planet figure, and I got the Spyrius figure, and my guy was named Ron the Spaceman. We didn't know anything about Spyrius, but he had a little ship, and his buddy, the Ice Planet guy, I forget what his name was, Kevin or something. Anyway, so we had our named characters, and we were exploring the galaxy, aka our backyard, and so that was basically our first introduction to LEGO Space.
Oh wow!
So and obviously these predated. I was born in '94, so I wouldn't have been around for the initial release, but in a yard sale find, that's the perfect way to get it.
Absolutely.
So it was a great way to get introduced to that. And I didn't even know it was Spyrius until later when I figured out, that's where Ron comes from. He's a Spyrian. So that was my introduction to it. But yeah, obviously doing research, working here, you learn a lot about LEGO. Known more about Spyrius, especially in the last year or two, because we've gotten some of it in the store, and it's always been a theme that's appealed to me, obviously, because my first space character was a Spyrius agent. And so,
so Spyrius is pretty special for you. Would you say this is your favorite in Classic Space, or
one of them for sure? I think that and Ice Planet, because of my brother having an Ice Planet figure. I have a great connection to both those themes. And it's worth mentioning that Spyrius would have been kind of a similar theme as far as like the time period to Ice Planet and Explorians and Space Police 2 and a lot of other classic space themes that we love.
Yeah, it's surrounded by that. I mean, you got Ice Planet, what was it, in 1993, and then after that, kind of with Spyrius as well, Unitron right there.
Yep.
Kind of, was that the last monorail? that we ever saw?
I believe so. I'd have to double check that, but I'm
94?
pretty sure that's the last monorail because
Wow.
they were a little too big and expensive for the time, and they just weren't selling as well as the other sets were.
Yeah.
So they stopped doing those shortly thereafter. So, which really sucks because they're so cool
Yeah,
and they're hard
so
to get.
cool.
So, yeah, Spyrius never got a monorail, although it did get a cool base, which we'll get into.
They just
later.
attacked the monorail.
Exactly. There's definitely commercials which you'll see that
classic.
show them just absolutely wrecking the monorail. So that's what they were for. The monorail wasn't for playing with; it was for getting wrecked by the robots.
Feature, yeah.
That's great. So first encounter definitely covered. Let's talk a little bit about our adult perspective. Working here at the store as an adult fan of Lego Alex, what are some of your thoughts about Spyrius? Is it one of your favorites? Like you said, it's top 2-ish with Mtron. Now, as an adult, like what do you think about the designs, the color scheme, and its impact on classic space? Just before we get too far into it. So.
Yeah, great question. I think it looks. I mean, visually, it's very stunning, but it's also it doesn't like. It's kind of it doesn't immediately catch your eye necessarily.
Maybe
so
more under the radar,
which makes sense because one of the things I love about this as an adult fan of Lego is just the story and the lore with Spyrius in particular.
They've got a great story.
So they want to be, the main premise of Spyrius is that they're spies that steal technology and information from other space factions. So it's really, tied into the whole lore of, which I love with Lego Space, which Lego did with all of the factions. So it really ties in a very new way as well, especially for a villain faction.
Exactly.
Something new to the scene that we haven't seen even since, because they re-released Space Police in the late 2000s. But it was just the classic villains versus the Space Police.
Yeah.
But this is a force that, from a lot of research, really the Space Police were really baffled with, had a hard time combating, and even, had to have a counter agent within Spyrius to even get information about them.
Spies and double spies,
absolutely.
yeah.
So all that is very fascinating to me. And we'll talk more throughout the video about all of this, the lore and everything, but that's one of the main reasons I love this.
It's deeper than what meets the eye at the initial glance,
Yeah.
right? So there's more to it than a lot of other space themes might actually have, because I like Spyrius a lot because, first of all, nostalgia, but secondly, the way that it interacts with other Lego themes in such a kind of important way. It's important to their story that they are trying to, spy on their neighbors. They're trying to steal information. They want your data. They really want. they would fit
ahead
in
of its time.
Yeah, they would fit in right in all the VPNs and stuff we have nowadays.
Yeah.
But no, so the fact that they kind of are literally encouraged to interact with things like X-Planet, Space Police, and Unitron is super cool, and I like that about
absolutely.
them. Some of the designs, I think, have some strengths and weaknesses, which we'll talk about when we talk about the sets themselves. But before we talk about the not huge lineup of sets, let's talk about some of the characters, which I think are actually more significant than some of the other themes of this era, because you'd have like a couple figures per theme. I mean, like Mtron, for example, famously has just one figure and then one with a backpack. But in the 90s, they were diversifying a little bit, so we have 3 different characters. Alex, can you tell us about these?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one we have the head honcho of the entire Spyrius. The Space Police call them a gang of villains, and they're robots. Head honcho is a robot himself, Major Kartowski. And he has some very amazing abilities.
Yes.
The reason he is the leader. And I always wondered why do they have this clear helmet on this figure? It looks
the
kind
transparent
of wonky.
helmet. Yeah.
I don't really understand why Lego put this. But recently I found out this helmet, when he puts it on, he becomes invisible. And all you can see are his eyes. And so it's a little scary, but he's the one that goes in undercover whenever they steal anything from other factions.
Yeah.
If they're on the ground, like with Unitron, if they're trying to steal plans for the monorail, this is the guy that. Especially, I think there's that old commercial. He's the one that's in there trying to get the plans
with his little rover vehicle.
They're trying to get it away from him. But I think it's really funny, and honestly, just that you can see his eyes is really funny, but really scary. So he's a really amazing figure. So you have any thoughts on
Kartowski? So Kartowski is a very interesting character. So I think that name that's assigned to him was kind of part of the British side of Lego marketing, which has some. I know they renamed Basil the Batlord as well. I'd have to look up the exact name that they kind of gave him a unique character. But I love some of the almost superpowers that they've given him with the invisibility.
It's really amazing.
First of all, he's a really cool figure too because he's got that extremely detailed torso and leg printing and that very unique head print as well. According to Wikipedia, he is the first robot minifigure. So the robot using normal minifigure parts, because obviously classic Spaces had lots of little robot characters brick built with plates and clips, but this is the first time they've gone to robot minifigures, so super cool. And then later themes like Explorians would also have robots either assisting or in the crew as well. So, but he's the head honcho. I didn't even know that until I think it was yesterday we were talking about it, and I think you might have even mentioned it earlier and it just didn't register, but it's super cool that he is basically the criminal underlord of Spyrius, and the other guys are basically just his stooges, and they're pretty cool too. But such a cool character, and so a lot to bounce off of with your own adventures and stories and builds. So it's cool that they have such a cool starting point for this character. I never had this as a kid. I've now collected a bunch of them because I think he's really cool.
Yeah, he's a very desirable figure. He's the most expensive of all the Spyrius, so it's usually $20 or more.
I think he was also usually in the larger sets, and that might have contributed to that. But the other two characters are both called Spyrian, or like Spyrian Chief, I think is the more detailed one. He's only different in that he has... Oh, that's the normal Spyrian I clicked on, but...
this guy here.
One has the plain helmet and one has the more detailed helmet.
Very detailed helmet. Kind of sets them apart. And a different face. And I think all these faces are unique to each of these figures. I don't think we see them on other figures.
I think so, yeah. They're theme exclusive, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, some very detailed figures. That fit right in with the other classic themes, too, so... Fun color scheme, a little bit of neon green happening on the visors.
Yeah, there's a lot of colors going on. I mean, you've got red, black, blue, and then that trans neon green. So it looks, it looks really cool.
And they also don't look like cartoonishly evil. They just look like they could be bad guys. Maybe you could kind of make up your own story.
Oh, I always forget. There's this really cool bandana on just the Spyrius figure.
Exactly.
Kind of a bit of a ninja.
But. Yep. So they work well in many space situations. But I think that. You could definitely believe that there's secret agents stealing data, but at the same time, I think that they also could just be whatever you want them to be. Like, as a kid, Ron the Spaceman was a good guy. He is a redeemed Spyrian, but now.
There's kind of a gray area with this faction because, they steal technology and information. They're kind of spies. So usually, they take it from, like, they took satellites from Ice Planet 2002.
Yep.
And maybe sell that information to like Blacktron, but they might steal information from Blacktron and sell it to the other factions.
Sell it to Space Police, exactly.
So
they could have some fun with that for sure.
Exactly, which is pretty fun.
Yeah. So they're not necessarily bad guys, but they're not necessarily good guys either. So it's great. But yeah, they got Spyrius Chief, Spyrius Agent there too. But let's go through some of the sets now because we talked about how.
Mark, I feel like we're being watched.
There's definitely lots of people watching this video right now. Alex is.
That's true, but I feel like there's something else.
Anyway.
Kind of weird. Anyways,
you get that feeling sometimes. It's an old building, So moving on though, we have a couple of cool sets, a couple bigger than others. But let's go through. First, we have. The Surveillance Scooter, which is also sold as a polybag, I believe. 2 different set numbers. So you have the box version, which was... is that correct? 1954 is the number on that one? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And it's just a little box with a tiny little ship that's actually smaller than the one that fits inside the robot here.
It's very small. Yeah.
So
I don't think we have it in
unfortunately,
our collections
no.
today.
Yeah. For some reason, that seems like it might be
good introduction.
Yeah.
To the theme,
and I think this one also came out in 1995. So this would have been like a accessory added on afterwards. Probably something that you could get either to add to the ones you already had,
it's not the main line.
Maybe it was a gift with purchase. You never know. Yeah. But then it also had a polybag version, which is 1714, and I haven't seen that one either before.
I haven't either, but such an affordable way to, especially back in the day, to kind of probably try another theme. Let's see.
Might have been $1 or $2. It was pretty cheap. But then moving on, this is one that I also haven't seen. I don't think I've seen this in the store. but it's the Space Castle
cool.
Value Pack, which I would have loved this
I know.
as a kid.
Dream come true.
But this is set number 1843, and this is how a lot of classic space sets were done. I know Ice Planet had a similar situation, other themes as well. But you have a Spyrius ship set on top of a classic Royal Knights set right there, too. And this would have been, I think, from the first year. I don't see the year here. This would have been a little bit later, 1996.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting.
Kind of
So this is like a sequel. But Lego must have found this to work well with selling some of their smaller and medium-sized sets, and I think in this case that is an exclusive way to get that Spyrius build and box.
Yeah, it only came in there.
So very interesting. These are all distinct from the kind of main line of sets, though, which we will get to in just a second here.
I love those combination packs. I wish they would do that again.
We do get a couple of those in the store. We'll see them every now and then, and it's weird because they tend to be super expensive. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but they're usually like $100, $200 or more because I think sometimes they were like either set exclusive or it was hard to find them all still together. Because you can sometimes find the built set, but to get all that packaging still together and complete, kind of rare. So
that's amazing.
One set I have seen a couple of times, and is actually relatively easy to complete if you have all these figures, is the Space Explorers 6704 or 505. And has the Major, has the Spyrius Chief, Spyrian, and has an almost an Explorer.
This one's all about Spyrius.
And Commander Cold, but no Ice Planet normal, trooper.
Yeah.
So this is more Spyrius than anything, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So have you seen this set before, Alex? Have you seen the box?
I haven't seen it, but I did see it when I was looking through all the different sets, and just love how the main thing is Spyrius. And I love how you get the things. It's that 1993 to kind of 1995 timeline. Ice Planet, Spyrius, Unitron.
Exactly. Yeah, a couple great themes all encapsulated in that one set.
They look great.
And this would have been similar to other figure packs of the time. Like I was looking through this magazine here, which we have here, which will show some of the products we've talked about. There's Ice Planet. There's pretty much a full page to Spyrius.
Got the monorail.
Wrecking it. And down here you can see Space Explorers, and I think they also featured at the end. Let me see if I can get to it here. So Space Explorers, Sea Mates, and you also have Medieval Knights.
Oh, they're amazing.
So there's 3 different
How
figure
much
packs.
were they back in the day? $7.25.
$7 for 5 figures.
Incredible.
Not bad at all. So a pretty cool set, and kind of like their way of making those figures a little more accessible. Yeah. But I also, one more note on this before we move on, is that they're using a upside down base plate, what it looks like, for the terrain that they're standing on.
I didn't even notice that.
And it looks like it's been spray painted or coated black with some kind of landscape chunks behind them. So they're just kind of improvising a base.
Is that now a legal Lego technique?
I don't know, but it definitely has a base plate look to it, like because you see the inset for the studs.
Yeah.
So that's something I noticed looking at the pictures yesterday.
Wow.
So.
Great attention to detail. I did not notice that.
I know that Spyrius had some cool space backgrounds, like most classic space sets, but that's a little bit more texture than I normally see, so pretty cool. But let's go with the next set we can talk about is the smallest set from the main line of sets, which would be the Saucer Scout. Both you and I have this, isn't that right?
We both have this one, yeah. Mm-hmm. Small, but packs a punch.
It looks like it would have been $4 in 1995. So
great price.
Pretty affordable, and there's some cool little box art for it there too. And this I was surprised at how conveniently he fits inside. The Spyrius agent fits inside, and it all perfect. Is like airtight, which is something that an older space fan friend of mine, Chris Giddens, is always very distinct about. So if there's any air that could get in, is it a good spaceship? Probably not. So this is it matches that threshold of quality. So it's good.
That's great. Yeah, to look at the details like that. Mm-hmm. It's much more realistic that way.
I've never had this set as a kid, but I did get it yesterday. Actually, built it at home, enjoyed it. I think amazing. You can imagine that being a very agile spaceship to escape from.
Yeah, it's really. I feel like and Lego was always hesitant to do like alien things for a while. They wanted to be at the point where they could do it well. Mm-hmm. But I feel like this is we're kind of starting to see, it's almost time. Because this is a very, alien looking spaceship. It's a flying saucer. I mean, and I think it's actually a perfect idea for Spyrius because, in that old magazine, Lego talked about how the space police couldn't see them on their radars, and like, you know, UFOs and all that. They're very hard to spot, and things like that.
Very stealthy.
With the lore we have. And so it's kind of a perfect idea to implement this as a kind of a UFO kind of ship.
Yeah, a prequel to more elaborate space themes that would come just a few years later, like UFO and insectoids. So. But yeah, big fan of the Seltzer Scout. Moving on, we have something that you have. I don't have this set yet, but I'm glad you could bring it in for us, Alex, is the Recon Robot, set number 6889. And this would have come out in 1994, so it was the first Spyrius release. And the picture's kind of small, so you can see just the figure.
I love the grid lines on the box and on the instructions. Exactly. That we saw from Imtron, and love how it's continued to this.
Carrying on. Maybe there's some sort of grid over the planet that is protecting it from asteroids or something. But tell us about this set here, Alex. What is some of the features you like about it?
Yeah, so again, one of the things with Spyrius I really caught my eye were the big robots, and kind of with the story, how the robots guard the base, guard their stolen technology and information from anybody trying to take it back, or the space police.
Oh, yeah.
So these guys, I think they're really cool. They
retro
can move
looking.
around. Yeah, very retro space looking, something like I feel like I'd see with the space from the 1960s or something, so I really like that kind of look with it. You've got a little compartment in the back. You can store weapons. But each of these robots have a little container. There's a little 1x2 printed tile, which is basically where they upload the information or data on for this stolen technology.
Almost like a cassette of information.
Yeah, and you can like put it into the box, and then the robot will guard it. So I like that aspect. A little controller can get behind here. Has a little unique control panel.
Kind of pilot him around.
Yeah. Now this one is not as cool as a robot we'll see later. So this one for me was a little underwhelming as a build. It's definitely a lot more affordable than the larger one. But again, all these sets are pretty affordable.
Yeah, $12 back then. So.
It looks good with the larger robot. So definitely think it's a great addition to the Spyrius collection.
Yeah.
Any thoughts you have on it?
I like the fact that they definitely clarified that this is a recon robot, and obviously they're making it just sound nice for the title, but this robot probably could go out and be very not stealthy, but he could go out and do things. So he's got those grabber arms. He could get information, interrupt a monorail, for example, interrupt their enemies to stop them from their progress and completing their transcontinental line or whatever.
Absolutely.
So so
they get ambushed by another faction. It'll help keep the stolen information safe. It's safeguarded by the robot.
Exactly.
So much harder to take down than Stallone Soldier, even Major Kartowski himself.
Yeah,
I can't believe I'm saying that. But.
Exactly. Yeah. But I know that Daniel isn't as big a fan of the big kind of brick-built robots. What are your thoughts on that, Daniel? Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But we still like it. I think there's a lot to enjoy about it, especially if you kind of look at it with that retro mind frame, kind of that concept. These would have been sort of old-fashioned in the 90s, I feel like. Or maybe that was kind of the deal, was having your own robot was cool. Yeah. I don't know.
It's something new to the table.
Just before my time, so I don't understand the cultural significance.
I guess they did have some robots in classic space, but I feel like these are a lot more fleshed out.
These are more definitely an entity of their own, because you had some robotic elements, but never a full big mech-like robot. Yeah. So some early concepts happening here for sure. But before we get to the two largest sets, let's get to what I think is the third largest set, or maybe this is actually slightly larger than the South Centurion, but the Robo Guardian here, 6949, and this includes a couple figures, it looks like.
This is my personal favorite from the line.
Yeah. This is the biggest, baddest robot you could have in classic space at the time. And you've got one, which is in very good condition. I've got one that's a little beat up. I replaced a few pieces to kind of fix him up a little bit. But this is a super cool machine. Tell us about some of the functions.
I was really impressed with the build and also all the functions, like you mentioned. Because you have this top, which is the head, but it can be switched out into a spaceship. You got a little
escape
fully
pod
enclosed too. Yep. Got to get out of there fast. Got ambushed.
Quick
but
getaway.
In the back here, there's a little compartment behind this control panel with another spaceship. This is like a fortress, I'm going to be honest. But this can also go onto the top, and you can have kind of a different head controller. And it can also be a spaceship. So I love the dual.
So two spaceships in a mech, which is pretty cool. So.
Also, you've got the little containment unit here for the stolen data. It's really cool because the robot can hold it, and also you can put it back as well. So they can, it has a tile in there, just like the last one. But also there's a little jail cell in the back. If you catch
you can actually put a whole person back there. That's crazy.
A little weapons rack here. And the best part, and this is when when you watch the old commercial with Spyrius and Unitron, them trying to steal the monorail plans. On the back there's this, oh no.
The head popped up, yeah. Try those.
It's still functional, don't worry. There's these, this is very old school, the way that this functions, but it works very well. You just put, you can move it up, but then it stops. There's two little antenna pieces about 4 length. You just go ahead and drop it down, and it drops this down. But it's meant to knock out the monorail train or the monorail track. In the video, in the commercial, it literally knocks out the track.
Yeah, just punches
so these
it right
things
out.
are really strong. Definitely, I can see why the Space Police fear this faction. I don't feel like they fear a lot, but this faction definitely is in the chills.
You have one of these roll up to your base, it's a problem for sure.
Definitely very menacing.
Exactly. And
what are your thoughts on it?
I do like that ratcheting system. I think it's pretty fun. It's definitely you could just smack stuff down. It almost reminds me of a Godzilla or King Kong type thing. It's really super cool. You also have, yours has a little grabber arm. I need to replace the one on mine. I think
so it can grab something.
A minifigure
I like the dual
accessory.
magnet and then the hinges there.
So pretty cool set for sure. And I like how it has 5 wheels on each side to really represent almost like a giant tank.
And it
tread.
moves the top ones too, which I was really impressed with. I wasn't sure if all of them would move on there, but that they can all move at the same time. I think it did a great job.
Pretty neat. So a very fun play feature, prominently featured in the advertising of the time. You could see them swinging their big arms all the time, so it's great. And because it has that magnet on its arm, you could probably interact with M-Tron, be stealing their containers and stuff. I'd love to test that because I have the Megacore magnetizer at home. That would be an interesting science experiment.
Can cause some havoc to M-Tron.
For sure.
They're trying to fix things, and
he's got an entire monorail in his hands up there on that. Image.
I love that.
That's pretty
and look, the little robot has a monorail track. They're just wreaking havoc.
They are destroying it. It's like that War of the Worlds over here, but it's great.
They realized how pricey monorail got, and they're like, well, we're going to take off with it.
Yeah, exactly. We could make a fortune stealing the track. That's great. But what I'm surprised is not the second biggest set, is actually the third biggest set. This is the Saucer Centurion here.
Would you say this is your favorite set?
For sure. Looking at it just back in the day, I thought it was a decent, cool, octagonal design ship. I didn't quite realize all the cool play features it had, though, and that's something that I learned. The first thing you assemble when you're working on it is this extending arm with very detailed, reaching fingers here with what looks like either electronically charged or maybe it's a gravity control or something.
You can catch a satellite with that thing.
A whole satellite or a figure.
Watch out.
This might be used to capture satellites. I think you're right, Alex. But the fact that it extends and retracts very nicely works great. You got a couple of these cool trans dark blue antennas, which look great. Yeah. And you got the double cockpit, which is cool. But the real party feature is the fact that this whole ship can separate from side to side, one stud apart, and release Major Kartovsky below with his little vehicle, which works great.
Get this mission done himself.
Exactly, and they show that in the commercial in detail, which is a very cool play feature. I didn't realize how fun it would be to enact that.
That's so fun. And I wonder what height, how far you can go and drop him, and he lands.
He's got 4 tires, so hopefully he could take a pretty heavy landing. But I think about 8 inches is great. Maybe beyond that, he might be not landing so safely, but. I really was extremely impressed with this ship. I really enjoyed it.
An amazing feature.
Yeah,
very unique, I feel like, for the space line. Do you know of any other sets that are like that in terms of dropping a little car? I
had some mental comparisons to the Galaxy Explorer when building this. Because obviously the shape of the ship is different, but the cockpit isn't too dissimilar, and the fact that it has these wings on either side with turbines and some jets at the back, it was giving me some of that vibe with just the layout there.
That's
and the fact that it has a vehicle that releases.
That's true.
Similar in concept.
Just different ways.
But a very different execution because it comes out underneath octagonal ship. So I was getting a lot of classic space vibes from this. I feel
that
like
must have been a really fun build.
Yeah.
Very nostalgic then for you.
I feel like the designer of this ship might have either been inspired by or may have even been the same designer who worked on the Galaxy Explorer. I have to double check that. But it was pretty neat. So I'm
cool.
big fan of this set. I think it's my favorite so far. So.
That's awesome. They probably stole, some of the technology information from Classic Space.
I feel like that's totally
the Galaxy
possible.
Explorer.
Yeah, and maybe improved upon it with the dropping ship. So
yeah,
pretty fun for sure. But that leaves, I think, one large set left on our list.
And this is the largest, right, of the Spyrius?
It is. It was definitely the most expensive, although it looks like it was about tied in price with the Robo Guardian.
Interesting.
Because it is not too many parts, although it does cover a big space.
Yeah.
This is the Lunar Launch Site 6959, and this would have come with all the figures, all three of the characters,
That's great.
and a bunch of pieces too. I got this set yesterday as well because we've had one on the shelf for the
been
past
eyeing that one a while.
couple of weeks, and I wanted it so badly, Alex. I finally got it. And building this set, I love some of the pieces. I love the figures. The base plate is a huge bonus for me. I love
an amazing base plate.
The paint and the texture. It looks awesome. The play features, like the base itself, isn't like amazingly impressive. I wasn't overwhelmed with how cool it is. I do like some of the features that are happening, so that you have the ship that can land and take off. That's pretty standard. You have this movable base here, so you can open it up and release the.
That's pretty awesome.
I think it's a missile to take out enemies, take out ships that are coming too close to their territory. So it's a cool missile. It looks very savage and sharp.
Forget about satellites.
Exactly. That's not a satellite. But then over here you have the little base area, which is also pretty cool. You've got a little entryway on the side which opens up, so that's convenient.
Simple, but
my favorite play feature is probably, honestly, the little weather vane up here that spins.
I didn't realize that spin.
So you can kind of get some, maybe it's a force field or a shield, or maybe it's just scanning for information that they can steal.
That's awesome.
So there's some fun play features there. I think that it's just not quite substantial enough for me. I think that
I could have used a little more.
A few more pieces would have been nice. It's a pretty low part count. I mean, there's a little vehicle, which is cool, but and the little ship is nice, but I think there's more that could be accomplished on this base plate. So I think I'm going to be customizing this and kind of enhancing it at home later. But I think it's sufficient.
What do you think of adding to it? What do you think? What do you feel like this set really needed?
I think that it just needs to be a little bit, just more parts. So like there's kind of one platform over here, and then the rest is basically just a few moving features. I want to see like another platform, a tower, maybe a little bit more substantial mountain area, a few gray bricks added. So just a few things here and there. I think it just needs like another 25% more, and it would have been great. But I know that Spyrius, they were not trying to make these super big or expensive. They're trying to keep them pretty conservatively sized and priced. And I think that's probably a good thing. But at the same time, I have a lot more Spyrius colored parts. Red and black are pretty common. I have some trans blue windscreens and stuff I could add to these areas. So I'm looking forward to upgrading this.
That's exciting.
To my wildest imaginations. So.
Can't wait to see it.
But Alex, what do you think about this? Have you ever seen it built before?
It's one that's been on my list. Like, well, this is the main set. It's their base. Definitely, if you collect Spyrius, this is one you have to have.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, the Robo Guardian kind of acts as a base, but they're more just guarding the base. So
yeah,
I do like kind of that aspect of it.
Secret layers.
It looks. I really like it. I think getting to build it myself, I might understand more where you're coming from. That it's kind of it doesn't have enough pieces. But I do like this little feature on top. I didn't realize that spin.
That's one of my favorite features. I like that a lot. So,
yeah, I wish there was. I mean, just looking at it, I wish there was more inside, or another like part to the headquarters. But I love the missile on there.
The missile's great.
Hidden. So it's like, oh, this is gonna be a piece of cake. The space police, and then they get out this missile. It's like, oh no.
Yeah, the missile hiding in that rock pillar is pretty cool. Yeah. I think even just a change of layout so you could access the back base a little bit better would be good. So I'll be playing around with it and see what I can customize at home. But I am glad that I bought it so that I can have fun with it.
Oh yeah, the raised base plate is beautiful on there. Now it comes in some other sets, the raised base plate. Right?
Yes, I don't know if this color is exclusive to Spyrius. It might be, or it might be from other themes as well. But it's not easy to find. We do have a couple of them here at the store, though. So. And like we've said, Spyrius sets, I think, are kind of, like we've said this before, under the radar. They're not like as high on the list of collectability as some other classic space themes. So you can still get this base plate for I want to say like $40, $50.
Oh yeah,
not too bad.
Sure it's $40.
So if you need this to build your own space base, totally possible.
Yeah.
So. But that's going to be the list of Spyrius sets that we have on Wikipedia. That's pretty much it. I don't think they've done anything since that kind of coincides with this theme. Although I did read on one of the pages that they had the Polybag reissue again in 1999, which would have been
that's cool.
Way beyond normal Spyrius sets release dates. So cool that it got a little bit of a second life afterwards. So
yeah, I like how Lego would reissue different sets around that time period.
They might have had a few extra Spyrius agents lying around, wanted to send them out. So.
Yeah.
But we talked about all the sets. Alex, you said that you have a couple that are on your list. What is your personal collection entail? You have the Saucer Scout, you have the Robo Guardian, you have the Recon Robot as well. Are there any others that you want to add to your list in the future? Obviously, the base is something you're looking at.
Yeah, the base, for sure. But now that I've seen what is this one called? The
Saucer Centurion,
okay,
I believe.
Saucer Centurion.
Yeah.
Now I've seen it in person, and just to see that, play feature, just how amazing it is. This one, it's now on my list.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it's actually, I would say, relatively cheap compared to other larger spaceships from this era.
Yeah,
so
something I love about this faction is that it's affordable. Like
Yeah.
if you want to get into space and you think Spyrius looks really cool,
yeah,
you want to give it a shot, just try, it seems like from us either the Saucer Centurion or the Robo Guardian, or one of the smaller ones.
Yeah, I feel like these are like half the price that Ice Planet or Unitron or other themes would be. So
they're available.
Yeah, it feels like. I know that they are more collectible than a new set, but they're more affordable than many classic space could be. So. Yeah, and then we talked a little bit about the interaction with other space themes, but did you have anything on your list in particular that you wanted to bring up before we get too far along?
Yeah, I got some things.
You did some deep dive research here, Alex. What's the first thing about Spyrius you want to learn today?
So Spyrius, again, this is a faction that was created, seems like Major Kartowski kind of put together this ragtag group of and it became, as they steal data, information, that's the main thing they do, and they sell it to other factions, also guard it for themselves. They've just become stronger and stronger, so much so that I'm pretty sure this is a United Kingdom magazine that I found.
UK marketing exclusive.
The story for this is like Mission Impossible in space. I love it. And you have basically, this faction causes an emergency meeting with the United Galaxy Space Council, and they meet on Ice Planet 2002 to combat this threat. Because the Space Police, they dread this faction. From the reports that they're getting, they can't always see them on radar. Major Kartowski, crying out loud, he turns invisible, and all you can see are his eyes. I'd be a little bit afraid.
That makes it easy to steal information.
And basically they call them a gang of villains, and they're robots. And they don't even realize that it's led by a robot leader behind all of this. And the Space Police, they have trouble with them. But basically the council determines that, they're a very serious threat to space peace and harmony. So you kind of got to this point where you had Blacktron, which is the main villain faction. Space Police combats them. There's the more, what was it, Blacktron 2 that comes out.
Yep, second wave of Blacktron.
And so the Space Police, they know how to get these guys.
They're just straight up criminals. But
absolutely. And you see in the Space Police sets, they have the little cages with the Blacktron figure. There are no Space Police sets, after the Wave 2 at this point. And there's no Spyrius figures in those cages. So we're talking.
I don't know if they've ever gotten caught.
And so, and they're just causing havoc to these other factions. I think in the magazine it talked about, because you had Unitron around this time with the monorail, and how they had to fast forward the opening of the monorail to be able to combat these guys, so that they couldn't steal, the monorail information. And so they had to fast track that. They're just causing havoc throughout the galaxy. And basically, I mean, their main base, they made it on one of the outer planets of the galaxy. So they're kind of out there, far removed.
On the fringes.
On the fringes of the galaxy. So I love, just that aspect of, and basically the reason the council and the space police figure out information on this is that they sent in a counter spy into the network of Spyrius. So one of these guys is a counter spy.
Yeah. We don't know who.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's how they find out so much about Spyrius. But again, like even if they go to the planet, I mean, you've got these giant robots guarding the base. You got missile silos on this thing.
They're well armed. Yeah,
absolutely.
They got giant robots.
It seems like whether this is a force field or
radar,
just radar, or send out, collect information. They're pretty well equipped to combat any factions that try to take them out.
For sure.
Or even they're so well equipped just to steal information from these other factions. To be honest, Blacktron, the main villain, but honestly, I think these guys are a bigger threat, to the different factions. A
more
very unique
covert
way, yeah. But this is literally, this is the way the story goes in the magazine. This is like Mission Impossible in space. I just love it.
Exactly. Yeah,
looking
at this little flyer that I have here, which would have been kind of this year, you've got Space Police kind of suggested over here with their ships. They've got a couple Blacktron guys in custody, but no Spyrius.
Yep.
Over here in the Unitron monorail transport base, you have Major Kartovsky
is he
in the set. He is hiding amongst the track, obviously stealing information from the passengers. And so that Spyrius is all over the place and you can't catch them. So that's amazing. So, very enjoyable. Yeah, you don't see any Spyrius with Ice Planet, but they are definitely referenced in Ice Planet's lore for sure.
Yeah.
Not even regionally exclusive. That's just kind of part of their storyline. So very cool. But yeah. And then I think that's what makes Spyrius so interesting is that the story relies heavily on interaction with other themes in sort of negative way. They're the bad guys. So pretty fun for sure. But we talked about this a little bit already, and Daniel definitely weighed in on this. But how has the style and design aged for Spyrius? Because we look back at certain classic space sets with a lot of fondness, either because it's a cool design or it's iconic. But I think Spyrius is less appreciated than some of those themes. Is there any of those reasons why you can think of, Alex?
I definitely don't think it has aged as well as some of the other ones.
Yeah, it's not as
classic space
recognized.
And Tron. Yeah, but I still think it has its own charm. I think some of the builds, are stronger, some are weaker. Like the smaller recon robot, definitely say would be a weaker build.
Yeah,
I was a bit underwhelmed by it when I built it, but when I built the Robo Guardian, I was blown away by that. And it actually, displays, I think, even better. I love, how you can change it up as well, and just all the functions that it has. I definitely think it has that, classic look, but it's also, you can kind of tell it's getting into a new era of space. So it's kind of in between. So it has its own, I think it has its own charm.
For sure.
Especially if you, you have the nostalgia for the figures and now for the builds. There's that aspect too, I think.
For sure.
Weight, but what are your thoughts on how it's aged?
I'm kind of the same way, Alex. I think I love a lot about Spyrius, but I can see why it doesn't appeal to some classic space fans as much as other themes. For example, I got a couple of these sets recently. The Saucer is a small set, so I'm not going to judge it too harshly. I think it's fun. The Saucer Centurion, I was very impressed by, and it kind of was definitely exceeded all my expectations. Found it very enjoyable. It's one of my favorite classic spaceships now. But the base, I think, is actually sort of not necessarily a letdown, but it's not as exciting as I thought it could be.
Didn't live up to the hype.
Exactly. So I'm as cool as I think it looks still, and some of the play features are fun. It is that's pretty simple. You look, a kid could get tired of that after a couple of days of playing with it. It's not timeless as some of the other space bases I've seen. So for that reason, I think that Spyrius is it fits in a weird space where it's yes, I think it's totally deserves a little more recognition, especially some of the cooler sets. But then sometimes it makes sense. It's under the radar in some ways too. So yeah.
It's really interesting that you mentioned one didn't live up to the hype and the other one kind of blew away your expectations as well.
For sure.
So Spyrius kind of has that middle ground of blows you away, or
yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of a polarizing theme. Like, and not everyone even necessarily likes the underdogs. Like, some people love the Forcemen, but then other people like the Black Falcons and think the Forcemen need to get kicked out. You know, so I think it's they're kind of like the dark forest of classic space. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think though that we can thoroughly recommend several Spyrius sets and figures for your collection. If you don't have a Major Kartovsky, I think you should be looking to get one pretty soon.
Such a legendary figure.
Exactly. A guy you will never see coming. Yep. But yeah, I think that's about it for today, though, Alex. Is there any other thoughts you had on Spyrius before we wrap this up?
Yeah, it's great to have learned more about the story and get to share this as well, because I really think it's an underrated theme and kind of under the radar. But it's, if you want to, if you're not into space, or even if you are, it's
or want to get into space,
very affordable. That's available out there. I know when I look at our store, Intron is like sold out,
or super expensive.
Yeah. And then you look at Spyrius, and we usually have half of them. So
I got a couple of these recently. We still have more out there. So
so it's definitely one that's easy to get into. And I think with a great story and with other great factions around it, it really has its place, in LEGO space.
For sure. I like that. That sounds good. What about you, Daniel? Any final thoughts? Yep.
Daniel has some choice words on it, but he's holding it back.
Yeah, he's I appreciate your conservative outletting of your feelings there, Daniel. Thank you. But yeah, that's about it we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next video. I think the next one we've got is a rare parts video, so stay tuned for that. It should be a lot of fun. So y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.